Today's video is nothing but HOA stories. This one's called Revolution Against Our HOA, posted by Deleted. My wife and I moved into a 64 townhome community that was 10 years old at the time. The HOA board was comprised of 5 members that were original homeowners when the community started and had been the sole board members since the community started. Their sense of entitlement was backcrap crazy. They thrived on their quarterly walkthrough of the neighborhood as they would write up every single home for some kind of violation, regardless of how minor the offenses were. Everyone gets a violation letter. Our first letter, the first month living there, was that our garage door paint was starting to peel. It was a 2 cm scrape where the panels met. It needed to be repainted, the siding needed to be power washed, there was a patch of green moss behind a bush, and the sliding door on the deck was dirty. There was dirt on the bottom of the door from recent rain, and it needed to be washed. We had 30 days to fix the issues or begin accruing a fee of $25 a day until they're resolved. I asked around, and everyone gets these ridiculously petty letters every quarter. No matter what you did to maintain your townhome, you were going to get a letter about something. And as this was going on, none of the major items the neighborhood needed fixed were addressed. After a decade since the construction, the ground had settled unevenly and many homes had standing water issues where it wouldn't drain after a storm. The rainwater would sit for 5 to 7 days in people's lawns. And, more importantly, there had been a legal fight with the town since the community started about our road being dedicated, meaning that the town was responsible for snow removal. Our HOA dues included paying for our own snow removal, which we shouldn't have to, and we were paying an attorney for 10 years to fight this, with no resolution in sight. Fast forward 2 years, and a few of us had enough, and we decided to band together to replace the board at the next annual meeting. The existing board got wind of this and hit us all with pages worth of issues with our properties, since if you have outstanding issues, you are not in good standing with the community. Thus, you cannot run for a board position or even vote for those running. This petty move brought the community even closer, and we all spent the weekend before the meeting helping each other clean out their HOA honey-do list. We took pictures, documented everything, then we had the US mail certified delivery of each packet with the completed list and photos to the HOA board who lived 75 feet away. Come board night, oddly enough, the lawyer was there to give an update that no progress has been made with the township on dedicating our road. He stuck around as we moved to the elections for the next board. We brought our signed petitions to add our names to the ballot. The board says we're not eligible as we all have outstanding issues with our property. We call bullcrap with our receipts from the post office that they received, our completed list with documentation. They reply that they haven't reviewed them yet, and we tell them that that's not our problem and we are in good standing. Their lawyer overhears this and he states we are eligible to be on the ballot if we can confirm the issues with our homes were resolved prior to the meeting. The HOA president glares at the lawyer, but the lawyer just shrugs, saying, "The rules are the rules." With the exception of the 5 existing board members voting for themselves or each other, we are voted in nearly unanimously to replace them. I lead the revolution because I was tired of the petty bullcrap when there were real problems in the neighborhood. Sadly, the rest of the elected board members vote me as president. I have no idea what I'm doing, but we spent the next few sessions removing all the dumb violations from most of the neighbors. We went through the bylaws to really focus on what's important. What happens next? It ends up that the lawyer was a friend of the previous president and was in no hurry to resolve anything as he was enjoying our excessive bill. I notify him that if it's not resolved in the next 6 months, we're finding new representation. He was actually good at his job when pressed to do it. He won the case, the town appealed, and they tried to drag it out. He fast-tracked the appeal as it had been going on for 10 years, and we won the appeal too. The town dedicated our road, and then the lawyer pressed that it should have been done years ago, and it wasn't him slowing things down, but the town. He ends up getting us a settlement from the judge for back pay on us paying the snow removal that the town was responsible for. We ended up using that settlement to have French drains installed across much of the community to clear the standing water issues. With the money left over, we fixed a lot of the neighborhood issues that the HOA should have been doing the whole time. Fences and sidewalks in disrepair, replaced dead trees and shrubs, and so on. It was great getting all that done without having to hit our capital reserve fund. I remained president until we moved out a few years ago. Our family began to outgrow the townhome, and now we live in a new, larger development with a new HOA. I was asked to run for a position on it, and I replied, not a freaking chance, but I will lead a coup d'etat if I need to. An update. As to the original HOA president, 50-year-old male, he wasn't actually eligible to be president. He wasn't on the mortgage. The townhome was in his mom's name. No one knew because he held the books. So, being the vengeful leader at the next annual meeting, I wait until ex-pres shows up with his petition to try and get his position back. I tell him, in front of the other 60-plus homeowners, that he can't even be at the meeting, let alone vote or be on a ballot, as his name isn't on the property. But his mom is eligible if she wants to. That was embarrassing enough for the entitled little jerk. HOA thinks our residential building is a hotel. Posted by Putrid Ad 695. My country has HOAs for multiple owner occupancy buildings, and I need to rant about my family's HOA. My parents have retired into a semi-touristy area near the mountains. They bought an apartment in a building where about half of the owners rent theirs out for tourists. The other half lives in the building. The building is registered as a residential building, and even the HOA bylaws declare it a residential building. It's legal to rent out as long as it's not done commercially. However, over the last 10 years, the owners participating in tourist rentals have banded together and introduced a hotel reception with 2 full-time employees and a website, all paid for by the HOA fees because the rental pool, as they call themselves, control the HOA. They've used that to bully the residents. First off, shortly before my parents bought the apartment, the HOA decided, instead of paying for routine maintenance on the communally owned parking garage door, to just get rid of that garage containing mostly residents' parking spots. Those spots were private property. They decided this was against the will of some of the owners. Next up, they make residents help cover the bill for the reception and employees. And then they forbid residents from doing renovations or any other loud activities during vacation season, which is nearly all year round, like ski season, hiking seasons, and summer, so they don't disrupt guests. They say guests have priority. They allow guests to throw loud parties and throw their trash in the garden because it comes with the territory of living in a hotel. They won't even allow changes to the outdated patios because it ruins the hotel's uniformity. My parents did it anyway and caused the first huge fight between the rental pool and the residents. The fire department recently did a fire safety check, which is unusual for a residential building. They discovered the building was missing escape route signage and told us that we only needed them if the building was used and registered commercially. The HOA now wants to buy extremely expensive signs and bill all the owners, including residents, several $1,000s. The building is still registered residentially. This is currently the straw breaking the camel's back. I'm now helping my parents sue the HOA in the city to enforce the building's status as residential and force the rental pool to stop commercial usage or to stop billing residents for commercial usage. The twist is, one of the HOA board members who absolutely hated my parents for fighting against the HOA recently quit renting out and moved into his apartment. In response, my mom snarkily suggested that he renovate his patio to make it nicer for himself. He's also suddenly very bothered by noisy guests. Last weekend, he asked my parents out for a beer and advice on patio renovations that he plans on doing this fall during hiking season. This comment tells OP to consult whatever the country's city planning is, and then OP says, they know, it's a small village, they just don't really care, which is why we're suing them. We're hoping to get the board member on our side. He has some influence with other board members. And then we might be able to fire the subcontractor that runs the daily HOA operations. We've considered notifying the tax authority, but we're hesitant to subject them to potential criminal investigations. But the lawsuit has pretty good chances. The courts can't turn a blind eye. This is the part that bothers the other residents. They haven't really cared much or haven't been able to fight due to age and health issues. It's all retirees. My parents can't legally sue over things like the parking spot since it doesn't affect them personally, and the HOA dropped the patio fight in order to avoid a lawsuit. Everyone has just tolerated it for years since it didn't cost much. But the additional fire safety measures for a hotel will cost thousands. It's not just signs. 2 apartments have been declared temporarily uninhabitable due to missing escape routes. More residents' parking spots would need to be removed. We would basically have to get rid of the garden. It wasn't built to be a hotel, and significant parts of the building would need to be redone in the future. All of these things are long-term issues, and the current fight is only about the signs which need to be done immediately. But if we allow that, they could argue that we've legally accepted commercial usage, and they could possibly apply for a commercial permit. Everyone was used to the running cost and didn't really notice them in between the regular residential running cost or had no energy to fight them. The residents are all elderly, some with cancer or other severe health issues. This is the first time they would actually send a separate bill for something that the residents don't need. And my parents have been arguing about it since they bought the apartment. The HOA gets involved with this one. Let's find out how. Don't want to return my rental deposit? Guess I'll have your eBay and rental business shut down. Posted by Xenon Bro. This happened almost 4 years ago. I was renting out a basement in a married couple's home. They were living there too. I always paid my rent on time and I barely interacted with them. Then it was time for me to move out, so I gave them plenty of notice in accordance with the lease. In my last week, I reminded them to pay me back the deposit that I had paid before moving in, 1 month of rent. I was naive enough to pay the deposit in cash and not get a receipt for it. This was definitely my fault, but hey, I was in college and it was the first time that I was renting a place from someone. They refused to refund back my deposit, and they made some stories up about how I had damaged the carpet, broke some lease rules, and so on. None of this was true, and I even had pictures of the whole basement. I didn't want to bother with legal recourse since it would be really hard proving a cash transaction with no paper trail, so I cut my losses and I let it go. Until I had some ideas. The husband was running an eBay store from his garage. That was his full-time gig. The entire garage was filled with items and boxes and shipping material and so on. It was a very successful business, to say the least. I looked up the HOA for that community and I contacted the head. I asked him if running a business from one's home in that community was in violation of the agreement. The HOA mentioned that it was. I told him everything about this husband's business and gave him the information that I had. He said he would contact the homeowners and look into it. That wasn't it. There's a law in my city that, according to the zoning ordinance, no more than one family plus 2 renters may live in one house. Guess what? It was a pretty big house, and there were 4 other renters living in the same house. I obviously let the HOA know about this, but I also called into the code compliance hotline and I gave them a tip. Both said that they would look into it. Fast forward to earlier this year. I had almost forgotten about this whole ordeal until something reminded me, and I tried to look up this guy's eBay store and it had disappeared. I tried to find him by his name and I couldn't find any clones or other accounts or sites. After letting curiosity get the best of me, I got in touch with the head of the HOA after many emails and follow-ups, and I got official confirmation that soon after my tip-off, the HOA sent him a cease and desist letter to stop running home-based business immediately. The landlord also received a violation in failure to abide by the zoning ordinance. HOA compliance, posted by Useless Skin. I hate my HOA. The only reason I live here is because the house was dirt cheap at the end of 2010. For the most part, I haven't had a lot of complaints, but during the lockdown, I decided that I wanted to give my yard some much needed TLC. It started with putting a gazebo in my backyard. I secured all the permissions that I was told that I needed and completed the work. Not 2 weeks after completion, I received a letter stating that it was out of compliance. After weeks of arguing, I had to literally pick up my 3,000-pound redwood gazebo and move it 3 more feet from the wall. Now I get letters complaining about the vegetation in my front yard. I get it, it's been neglected for a while. I'm doing my best to comply, but the trash guy only comes once a week, so I can't throw away much yard waste at a time. Cue more angry letters and enter the malicious compliance. I decided that I'm going to remove my tree and replace it. I also want to just remove 5 plants. One of them is clearly dead by now. Their paperwork specifically says that I have to submit 1 item per design change request. So I submitted 7 different requests, 1 for each plant, 1 for tree removal, and 1 for tree installation. Now they're sending me generic copy-paste replies saying that I can change the yard. None of them specify what design change was approved. I just keep replying to all of them asking for clarification. The last one I got said it was for the tree removal and planting of a new tree, but it didn't include the original letter or even a reference number. So I just replied back that I would like the specific letter included in the email so that I can have an approval paper trail. They burned me bad with the gazebo incident. I won't get burned again, and I'm having a grand time, wasting as much of their time as possible. I smile every time I reply to an email asking for specific information. An update: since many of you are saying that I should run the board, here's why I won't. I have a full-time job that requires at least 2 weeks of travel each month. I have a teenage daughter that I want to spend as much time with as possible before she moves out. We go to a BJJ Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym 4 to 5 nights a week, and I also have a foreign exchange student living with me that wants to see America. My wife's a principal, and I absolutely hate the HOA, so joining that team and dealing with others' hatred for it is most definitely not what I want to do with my free time. I'll play their games, maliciously. And yes, I want to move, but I don't know if you realize this or not, housing prices are insane. I'm staying put for now. The HOA takes over and destroys my property, but I'm not even part of the HOA. Click on the video on your screen, you don't want to miss the fallout of this crazy story, and I'll see you there.